Oh, Dr. Masugu, how are you, sis?
Thank you.
I see Bra AD is there.
Yeah, good morning, Chairperson. I was waiting for members to greet you, but seeing that they are not responding, probably they are having tea. I'm responding on their behalf.
Yes, no, I was doing my sound and visual tests, so it's working.
Oh,
How are you?
okay.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
All right. Good morning, members.
Good morning, Eddie.
Morning. Yes,
Morning, Eddie.
Morning. It's 9 o'clock now. We need to start with our meeting. We do have a quorum. I've got Mr. Chaban here, Ms. Bulegwa, Ms. Mudise, Mr. Ross, Ms. Kanyile, Ms. Tito, and Mr. Lekota. I'm not sure if there are others that I did not mention.
I'm present.
Yeah, so we do have a quorum then to proceed with the meeting. Firstly, I would like to mention that the chairperson is on leave. Then the first agenda item on our meeting is the election of the chairperson. In terms of Rule 159, if the chairperson is not in the meeting or is unable to chair the meeting, the committee must nominate one of its members to be the acting chairperson of the meeting. Now I'm going to request that members nominate one member to be the acting chairperson. The procedure would be that if there's only one nomination and that there's no other, and then it means that person will be declared a chairperson. If there are two nominations, the person with the most votes would be the acting chairperson. I will request now to members to nominate a member to be the acting chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson. I want to nominate the name of Honorable Mosa Chaban to be the acting chairperson. Thank you.
Mr. Chabani has been nominated as the acting chairperson. Any seconder?
I second.
Ms. Mudisa has seconded. Any other nominations? There's no other nominations. So, Mr. Chabani, you have been duly elected acting chairperson. I hand over to you.
Good morning, Mr. Matonsi. Good morning, honorable members. Good morning, chairperson of the IEC and your entire collective of commissioners and the executive CEO, Mr. Mama Abulo, and the staff and our media. You are all welcome. We'll request Mr. Matonsi to highlight the agenda. Mr. Matonzi, are we together? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Matonzi, for the agenda. Members, this is the agenda which we're going to interact with. There's going to be a briefing by the IEC. And after the IEC, we're going to have interaction comments by members. And after that, we'll give the IEC, the chair and your team. And we'll then get into item number 5, consideration adoption of the budget vote report of Home Affairs and its entities, which is Government Printing Works and the IEC. And then we'll then have comments around that. Then closure. You remember this item was deferred to this meeting today. So all of us are welcome to interface with the report. We must note that we're going to have difficulties. Some of the members have been experiencing challenges on the load shedding. And I hope that we may need to be focused in terms of the presentation. Most of our colleagues are going to have challenges around 10 or 11. So I'm just making that highlight. And I think on your side, Chair and the IEC may have certain challenges. So we may need to assist each other in terms of the time presentation and comments to that effect. You must note that there are many plenaries that are going on today, and some of our members are going to be participating in those mini plenaries. So if they leave the meeting, it will be as a result of the preparations. We'll extend a happy birthday to Honorable Brandon. I'm told this is a birthday today. Without waste of time, all of us are welcome. I will go into item number 3, request Mr. Matonzi to run on the apologies.
Chairperson?
Mr. Matonzi?
Yes, I'm done with apologies. I'm not sure if you heard me. I've got 2 apologies of Advocate
done.
Bongo.
Okay.
No, of Advocate Bongo and Ms. van der Merwe. Those are the only 2 apologies.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Matonzi, can I check with the IEC chairperson or Mr. Mamabulo if there's any apologies?
Thank you, Chair. No, there are no apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll accept the 2 apologies as presented. Advocate Bongo, the chair of the committee, and Honorable Zell. I'm going to invite the IEC to brief the committee on the annual report and the financial statement as indicated on the agenda. Chairperson Mashinin.
Thank you, Honorable Acting Chair, Mr. Chabane, the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Mzwaledi, the Honorable Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Mr. Njabulo Nzuza, Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee present, and the officials of the Department of Home Affairs and its agencies who are present with us. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again an appreciation for us that as the Commission, we've been allowed to come and make a report on the committee on the annual report for the financial year 2019 to 2020. And on behalf of the Commission, we would be able to have a presentation from the CEO and the CFO that will give us some of the details of the budget. But from my side, I will just touch some of the key high-level issues, taking into consideration now of the indication from the chair that there may be some constraints. So we might have to be more brief in our presentation. Honorable members, let me once again indicate that I am accompanied by my fellow commissioners, the Vice Chair, Ms. Love, together with Dr. Masugu and Commissioner Miepia. And further, with the CEO is also here with the administration team. And in the team, we have the Deputy Chief Electoral Operations, Mr. Shiburi, and the Deputy CEO of Corporate Services, Ms. Henning, and the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for our outreach, Mr. Mosri, together with the Chief Executive of the Party Funding, Mr. Mahlangu, and our CFO, Ms. Mbata, as well as our administrative and communication support team, Mr. Kelembe and Mr. Granelli. Honorable Chair and members, as we are looking into this report in the year 2021, so much has changed in the world since the period covered by this annual report, that as we speak, it is hard to believe that it has been 14 months since the conclusion of the 2019 financial year. And yes, as we plan and prepare for the upcoming local government elections later in the year, as announced by our head of state, this is an opportunity for us, together with yourselves, to reflect on some of the successes and also the challenges that we faced as a country while we were delivering the 6th national provincial elections on the 8th of May in 2019. And importantly, it is also a time for us to reflect on what we can learn, how to further enhance our systems, our controls, and performance management as part of our quest for a continuous improvement in the delivery of our elections. And with this respect, this in mind, honorable members, let me start by highlighting some of the key achievements that were accomplished by our institution and therefore by our country and in 2019. Among these is that the delivery of the South Africa free and fair national and provincial elections that were held on 8th of May. Among those outstanding things, therefore, was we had a record number of 26.6 million voters who actually were on our voters' roll, and a record number of 78 political parties that contested those elections. Again, a record number of the special votes that were cast, which is about 570,000. And we also enjoyed as the lowest percentage of spoiled ballots since the advent of since 1998, where we recorded 1.27% as opposed to 1.29 in 2014. And also we enjoyed the highest percentage of women elected to the National Assembly, 45.25%, which is a major development in our country. And the other development that we want to highlight is the election satisfaction survey results. We realized from there that we continue to make improvements in our processes as we enhance accessibility and participation. The results that were conducted on 2019 election day showed that 68% of the voters took less than 15 minutes to reach their voting station. That is now the the distance from their residency to the elections. And once they were there, the average time waiting to vote was about 16 minutes. And the survey also showed a high level of confidence by voters on the freshness and the fairness of the elections, which we enjoyed a 95% voter satisfaction. And about 96% of the voters also voiced their general satisfaction with the quality of services rendered by the IEC. And the other thing is that we conducted the free and fair elections in that particular year, where we delivered 144 by-election, all within the legislative prescripts of that year. And this was 44 by-elections more than 2018-19 financial year. And the average length of the time taken to place a ward vacancy was 81 days. And in addition, the by-election of ward councillors and electoral commission also processed a total of 500 PRs councillors replacements during the year in review. And for us, therefore, this represents a significant increase in the number of PR councillor replacements than in the previous years. At the same time, honorable members, there were some challenges, and part of those challenges involved that, despite recording a new record number of voters on the voters' roll, the Commission noted a decline in the voter turnout on the election day. The turnout is 66% in 2019, which actually represented the lowest yet recorded national and provincial elections. And this is the area that we continue to say we need to work together to improve and to strengthen. The other concern was that on the election day, we saw concerns that were raised of the possibility of double voting or allegations of double voting. Despite there being only very isolated cases that were actually detected and apprehended by our officers, we saw the power of social media meant the rapid spread of reports on alleged double voting posed a significant risk to the overall credibility of the election. The Commission was, however, pleased that investigation showed no evidence of voters having been able to vote more than once. And this was supported by none other but by our statistician general that conducted, independent of the Commission, the statistical analysis that we shared with all the political parties as stakeholders and was made public. And the Commission was also pleased to report that, as we took delivery of the 1,000 units of the voter management device, which we had been talking about since the last election. And for us, we then hope that this is going to go a long way to ameliorate the perception of possible double voting, because we now have the device that will be in a position to enable us to detect anything and prevent it just in time. Honorable Chair and members, these are just the few aspects of the issues that I wished to highlight. But let me allow then the CEO and the CFO to then take us into the details of the 2019 and 2020 report. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chairperson Mashinini. Mr. Mamabulu.
Thank you, Chairperson of the committee, as well as the Chairperson of the Commission, members of the Portfolio Committee, my fellow colleagues in the IEC who are here. Greetings to all of you. I'm going to share the presentation. The Chairperson, the contents are as follows. Will at the very outset give an indication to the committee of the overall audit opinion. Then we will get into the performance information in respect of the 3 programs that we had at that point in the institution. And then lastly, the CFO will give a detailed analysis of the annual financial statements on whose basis the Auditor General has made this opinion. Now, the audit opinion is an unqualified opinion, which really is the same as the preceding year. The members of the committee will recall that in last week's presentation, we have indicated our desire for a clean audit, and we are keen to invest the resources, time, to ensure that we realize that fit. It remains a strategic objective of the institution to realize a clean audit. Our view, and having analyzed the overall audit opinion, audit report, as well as the management letter, our view is that we are not far off from achieving that fit. But it does need us to commit energy, commit resources to realize that fit. Now, just high level overview by numbers. We were working from a revenue base of 2.1 billion, of which expenditure realized in the year was 2 billion. As at the close of the financial year in March last year, we had 26.7 million people registered on the roll, of which 95% had a complete address. And a complete address, I think it's important that we indicate that given the uneven development in the Republic, a complete address is not one universal concept, in a sense that a complete address in an urban setting would have a number of attributes, a house number or a stand number, a street address, and a suburb name. So it accords with a conventional complete address. Yet when you go into farming areas, a complete address bears different attributes. Similarly, when you go into rural villages, a complete address there would be quite different. For instance, in Limpopo, we had at the time, in March last year, 22,924 voting districts and therefore voting stations. And in the year, we obviously had the 8 May general elections, national and provincial elections, as well 144 by-elections, all of which were declared free and fair, and none of which were set aside through judicial reviews. Now, if we get to performance information in the 3 programs, we start with program 1, which is our administration program. In that program 1, we had 10 targets, of which 7 were realized or exceeded. So that gives us an achievement percentage of 70%. In relation to program 2, which is really the core business of the institution, which houses all electoral functions. Again, there we had 10 targets, of which 7 were either realized or exceeded, giving us a performance achievement of 70%. The last is program 3, and that deals with strengthening electoral democracy. This houses your outreach programs, your voter education, your communication, your research, and related functions. There we had 7 targets, 5 of which were either realized or exceeded, giving us a performance percentage of 71. Now, if we go into the detail of program 1, this program 1, it's your what one could refer to as where we house our corporate functions and centralized support services, so your business functions, as well as the commission oversight structures are all housed in this administration program. So the number of commission meetings held in the year, the target was 11, we realized that. Quarterly reports per annum reviewed by the Chief Electoral Officer within 30 days, 4 were realized. In quarterly internal audit reports reviewed by the Audit Committee, 4 were realized. Quarterly review and update of the Strategic Risk Register by the Executive Risk Management Committee, again, the target was realized. The number of permanent staff positions that were filled, we achieved 88% against a 90% target, so it was not realized due to the ongoing organizational review process and the challenges that have been experienced in relation to that project. The number of staff who were provided with developmental training opportunities, we had planned 180 and we realized to 84. And the over performance here, so to speak, was occasioned by the fact that ahead of an election, we placed a significant proportion of staff on the facilitation training skills at the local level to ensure that people had those skills to be able to train the electoral staff which work in the voting stations. Then the next one, which was not achieved, it was compliance with performance management. We had planned 100% of all qualifying staff. We've realized 98%. And the 2% really is staff who are on sick leave and staff on, and this is long-term sick leave that is, and those staff were on maternity leave. And furthermore, those that are on probations and related things. At the point when we're in March 2019, we had set ourselves to achieve an unqualified audit report, which, as I reported, was realized. But we have taken a step forward, as I indicated, to say, yes, an unqualified report, it's good, but we can do better, and we ought to do better, which is why we've set ourselves a target of a clean audit going forward. Now, we are a very IT-intensive institution, hence it is a strategic necessity that our network and application systems availability is measured. So we've set a 97% of hours of achievement, in other words, uptime of our electronic systems. We managed to realize a 97.3% application and network uptime. And then also we invested hugely in our platform upgrade, which means investing in new software to run, on which our business applications run, supported by new infrastructure hardware, including the storage area network, the servers, and so on. So that that was achieved. This was important, partly because you need to invest in new software and new hardware from time to time in order to stave off potential attacks, cyber attacks, and so on. Because the newer versions of software comes with inbuilt protections, which are updated, and so on and so on. So that project was completed within the year. Program 2, I indicated this is really where the core business is, and I'm going to run over this. Firstly, is the average number of days in which elections are conducted from whence a vacancy arise. We have 90 days. On average, we've done that within 81 days, and we've declared results within 2 days. And then the average number of days in which a PR replacement is done, the law allows for 35 days. Our average performance is 23 days. And then the number of calendar days in which the elections are declared and announced. We managed to achieve that in terms of national and provincial election, as well as for the by-election. So that was achieved. And then this one is a very important, a difficult but important target. Number of elections set aside in each year covered by this plan. There were none. The target was 0, because we don't want any election to be set aside, because a set aside does communicate certain weaknesses in the system. So part of our duty is to ensure that there are no system lapses serious enough to warrant a judicial set aside of an election which has been conducted. So we've been able to realize that. Number of registered voters, we had planned 26.8 million. We realized 26.6. So 185 short of what we had targeted. And then number of people for whom we still do not have an address. We were 35,000 short of the 1.3 million target that we had set ourselves at that time. And this is a moving target, in a sense that it's something that is in a state of continuous flux. People do change residential addresses, and people who have addresses on the roll, unfortunately, there's mortality, so people die. And as we make monthly changes, it then does affect the number of persons for whom we have addresses on the voters roll. So as we increase, there are also losses. Hence, I'm saying this is in a continuous state of flux. Then the number of voting stations contracted, we came short of 76, but it's because we had used more the voting center concept rather than creating additional voting stations. So we exploited the greater use of voting centers, meaning at one voting station, you manage the voting station as though they were separate voting stations, and we call those substations, and you break up your voters' roll accordingly. Then the electoral materials, we all were able to supply 100% in terms of the bill of materials. The liaison with political parties, we achieved that. Then the number of staff, we had planned to recruit 208,000 staff, and we recruited 198,000. So we're close to 9,200 short. And not all positions were filled because of the needs analysis on the ground indicated that we had oversupplied. Then the last program, Chair, it's the number of persons who turned up to vote. Our target was 70, we realized 66.05, so 9.3% below. Despite our intensive campaigns on the ground, as well as a massive communication campaign, the reality is that voter turnout is influenced by many factors, some of which are outside of the purview of the Electoral Commission. Civic education events, these are voter education events, we achieved that. Now, the audience for our different media, not all this were realized. We had planned the 5 million, which was constituted of 2 million of TV audience and 3 million radio audiences. And there was a huge overachievement in terms of radio, because we have had a very intensive CDE radio programming, particularly aimed at encouraging the youth to vote, which then attracted higher audiences on radio. And then the public perceptions held of the Electoral Commission, evidenced by a media report. We had planned an 80% neutral or positive. In the circumstance, we realized a 96% neutral or positive media coverage. And then spoiled ballots, we had planned 1.85, we realized 1.27. And then international license, we had planned 50, we realized 52. Number of research programs, we did 5 against 4. Chair, that concludes the performance report. And as we indicated, we are reporting a 70% across the 70% performance achievement across the 3 programs. Now we'll get into the figures that underpin that performance, and the CFO will take us through. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, C.
Thank you very much, CFO.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Chair, members of the committee, Minister, the Commission and colleagues and members at large. If I can then get into our presentation, if I go to the next slide, the basis of our presentation is in terms of the PFMA. The annual financial statements have been prepared in accordance with the relevant accounting standards, and in this case, it will be the GRAP standards. It's important to note that we did not have any changes in accounting policy. If I then move to the slide, this is the outcome of the audit for the current year. I think this is very important to maybe stop here, and that's where the question comes in to say, what stood between the Electoral Commission in getting a clean audit opinion in the current year? And it's mainly because of this paragraph, which resulted in a material adjustment to the financial statements. This is an issue that still has not really been concluded. We have discussed it with the AGSA, who have agreed to go with us on a joint consultation. We do have strong views on the impact of the finding that was raised. So that is now going to be discussed with the Accounting Standards Board. If I can then move to the next slide. This then shows our statements of financial position. If you then look at our current assets, there hasn't been a significant increase. We have increased about 41 million, of which really is informed by the inventory that has actually decreased, as well as our trade receivables that increase, but also then largely by the cash that has been sitting in the bank. If you then look at our non-current assets, the major increase, which is about 10%, really relates to the ICT refresh that we had during the year. If you look at our current liability, the increase is informed by the prior year. We had actually prepared for election. You'll see the 240 million, which then subsequently decreased to the 152 million. That's because we prepared in the prior year, and then the next year it was significantly lower. The 27 million represents a portion that related to foreign and local assistance. We were asked by COPTA to assist them with election. That was a portion that was left over unutilized that had to be paid over to them. If I then move over and I look over at our financial performance, this is our revenue. Our increase in revenue is 3%. The CEO has touched on the values. If you look at our revenue from non-exchange transaction, that was about 20% increase, largely informed by the revenue we generated from the ROC facility, as well as also the foreign aid assistance, a portion of 90 million that we recognized in revenue. Then the investment revenue, that's really generated from the interest that we earn from the banks on a favorable bank balance. If I then look at the expenditure, the employee cost increased by 3%. The goods and services are well dissected in the next slide. Then the rest of it, really the depreciation and amortization, is really informed by what we put into the income statement as a result of our balances, and also is informed by how much that we bought. I think the other items don't really need that much detail. The leases increased by 4 million. If I then go to the next slide, this is our revenue versus expenditure. If you look at 1920, this is just a graphical depiction. We've expensed close to what we actually received. And that's also informed by us being in an election years. 1718 was a non-election year, and also less money was actually given to the Electoral Commission. If we then move into the next slide. This now gives you the specific election costs. 43% made up of electoral staff, 13% made up of communication and campaigns, 7% by voter education events, 6% by recruitment and training, and then 6% went actually to registration and voter maintenance. 5% went to the registration and voter material, including distribution. The 5% went to election and operation centers, 4% went to voting stations and infrastructure, and then 3% went to ballot paper. And then lastly, the 10%, we lumped up a couple of the expenditure, which is ICT, voting stations, logistics. So that's what informed our cost. If I move on to the next slide, this just gives you a comfort of where we are in terms of our liquidity. Liquidity talks to our ability to pay our debts as they fall due, which are current, our operational ratios. This also kind of gives you a glimpse at to what extent we are paying our suppliers. I think last year we were sitting about 28 days. Then this just shows you the trends and how we've improved over the last years. If I move on to the next slide. Compliance with laws and regulations, if we can get into that detail. So if you look at our regular expenditure, if you look at the year 18-19, you'll see that in the previous year, we'd incurred 131 million in terms of irregular expenditure. This has decreased significantly by 513%. We can confirm that there have been 5 dismissals relating to the irregular expenditure that's been incurred. There's also been, in the reporting period, there were no material findings by the Office of the HESA. They only identified 2% of what is reported of the 21 million. In the current reporting period, we also got a condonement of 25 million. And that condonement by National Treasury was informed by the basis that there was no financial loss to the state, remedial action had been taken, and we were able to demonstrate process enhancements. The remaining balance of the irregular expenditure that forms part of that 21 really relates to the periods going back to 2013. We have implemented a process in place of unpacking what makes up that amount. There is a process and we are clearing it. If I then move on to the last slide. Last slide shows you a picture of our fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 98% of that balance of 1.3 million relates to a petrol card fraud. This matter has been reported to SAPS. The remaining items related to late payments as well as payments of an incorrect supplier. Chair, I'll hand over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, CFO and CEO and Chairperson Mashinini. Members, this is a presentation, annual report, and the financial status of IEC. We appreciate the detailed presentation made by the team IEC. We're going to invite members to interact with the presentation. And I must note that our members, as I've indicated earlier, some of them have been kicked out, including Mr. Matonsi, who's our host to this meeting. But we have to navigate with the load shedding. I will start with Honorable Tito, Honorable Lekwa, Honorable Ross, Honorable Khwase, Honorable Kanyile, Honorable Mqini, Veteran Lekota, and Honorable Pillay. In that order, Honorable Tito. Honorable Tito. Okay. Honorable Molekwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start by appreciating the presentation on the annual report for the 2019-2020 financial year presented by the IEC, and also congratulate the Commission for their achievement on the unqualified audit opinion. We really appreciate the effort that has been put on the audit process for the Commission in order to achieve this audit opinion. Chairperson, again, we do understand the challenges faced by the IEC on other programs that were not achieved. However, Chairperson, especially on the program 2, on the voter registration, I just want to encourage the IEC that they should put more effort in the coming voter registration in July to mobilize more people to register, especially the youth, because most of the time the outcome on youth registration is too low. So I just want to encourage them to put more effort. Maybe they can also extend the campaign, especially to the high school for the first-time voters, to make sure that those youth are registered. My question also is only on the allocation on the budget, especially on the allocation for material. I just want to check with the Commission whether this 5% allocation for material is going to be enough, taking into consideration the material for voter registration and the material for voting the chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Molekwa. Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the IEC for the presentation. My first question is really around the registered voters, and their target has been slightly missed due to the reason of there not being a registration weekend. And looking forward at the budget, we can see that the number of registration weekends for this election and the national election has been reduced by one each time. So my question is, what other initiatives will there be to try and register voters? And secondly, will you be considering other channels, such as, for example, what Honorable Tito was saying, if we have mobile units going to schools, will they be registering at the same time? Or if people go to a Home Affairs office to get an ID, will they be encouraged to register to vote? Secondly, allow me to congratulate you in terms of getting irregular expenditure more under control. Well done on that. Thirdly, the performance over the years, it's always hovered around the 70 to 80% mark. And specifically the organizational review, which you've not managed to complete for the last 3 years. Please indicate what you're going to be doing to break above the 80% mark and to get that organizational review done. And then finally, there's been the question of advertising on SABC, and the president calling for the ANC to advertise or have more advertisements on the SABC. Will you be monitoring that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ross, for the contributions. Honorable Lokose.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me also follow through by congratulating the Commission for doing their work and the efforts they put every time when they meet with us. Their presentations are forever detailed. But maybe my question would be around the realignment of wards. I want to know if they've already gone through the process, because when we go into the ground doing our constituency work, the voters are still confused on where they fall. The demarcation is not clear on who votes where. So I want to check with the IEC, have they gone through the process and is everything ready for when we go for elections? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Lokose, for your contribution. Welcome back, Honorable Kanyile.
Thank you, Chairperson, and you, and greetings to the IEC representative as well. I would also like to take this opportunity and welcome the presentation that is brought before us by the IEC, and also indicated that I have noted that apparently they've indicated that they have dismissed 5 people on allegations of irregular expenditure. Well done on the action that you have taken, IEC. I'd also like to make comments on the issues that were raised by the chairperson in his opening, the IEC chairperson. He mentioned the issue of the voter management device. I might have missed him, but the question that I have, I would like to know that, do they think we are going to have the devices ready before the 27th of October, noting that we are going to have the local government elections on that day? And secondly, I'm also worried about the issue of voter registration or voter turnout, because in the presentation of the IEC, they've indicated that in 2019, only about 6 people have actually turned out to vote. The question that I have around that matter is, what is the IEC actually doing about that? Because it also looks like it is a fight that we are also not winning as politicians. We spend most of our time on the ground, but it looks like we're winning in terms of being able to get more people to come out to register and to vote. And during the presentation, the presenter indicated that apparently there was they attracted a higher audience on the radio and mentioned that it was young people. I'd like to know, how did they actually ascertain or identify that it was actually young people that were listening on those radios? I also remember in the previous meetings, we had suggested to the IEC if they would also going to consider using the social media in encouraging young people to go and register. And today that did not actually come out from their presentation. Lastly, Chairperson, I'm worried by the ability of the IEC this year, considering that it is the year of the election. Maybe their is totally different from what we would have expected. I recall in 1994, I did not vote, but just before the elections, there was a very big hype about the elections. There were pamphlets of the IEC everywhere. As young as I was, I knew that the adults were going to vote. Something was happening. But this year it is very, very quiet, and we do need more people to go out to register and to go and vote, especially in the upcoming elections. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Kanyile, for your contributions. Honorable Mkini.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Yes, mine and greetings to everyone. I would like to say I note the presentation by the IEC. Sometimes I feel like I'm a double deeper because I sit with them in the NPLC as a member for a political party, so I've got 2 heads. Now, my one will be to say most probably that what is the IEC going to do to ensure that parties have a proper oversight of on their systems, oversight to make sure that the elections are free and fair. For example, you can on a VD level, when you want to to ensure that the votes of your party are fine, there's a push for you to it's very difficult in terms of the oversight. And then something that we'll write to actually them, maybe they might even take into consideration that we are going to propose that the way that we are sitting as party agents, it needs to change, because we need to make sure that the parties, they look at their votes. Currently, we are sitting very far from the people who are actually supposed to be looking at the votes. So I want to also to get the views from the chairperson or Ulan Obrasai in terms, what is his view in terms of changing the way that the voting station is. Currently, party agents are sitting very far. They cannot do their proper oversight. And then also the electoral law calls for 2 party agents, but we have been given 1, understanding the venue, constraints of the venue. So I'm trying to appraise them that these are the wave of problems that they are going to be encountering everywhere in the country as they go to the LGE. So I would like to get his views on that. Number 2, the issue of the addresses. There's a problem with the addresses, but I will give we always like to give the IEC time and space and try, because maybe it is not a very easy thing. I raised the fact that in KZN, let me give an example with the KZN. In KZN, you've got 1 person staying, 200 people staying in 1 address, and it's occurring quite a lot. And probably I wanted to bring it into the NPLC to have a look and reflect on this. There's a huge problem there, and then you find that people who are not staying that address or staying somewhere else, they take their that address and go and vote. So they need to zoom into those kind of spaces and inspect, their voters wrong, especially in the case at Tequin. To look into that, we're seeing it in some other areas, patterns, where one address is being used for many people. Because now we are analyzing these voters' role in detail and getting into it. So I wanted to check what is the view of the IEC on that. Employment. On this employment, I think that there's a pronouncement by the political party, EFF, even the other ones, that as you are going to the LGE elections, you must make sure that the staff which are there are not coming from the SATU. They are not SATU members. Because if they are, we find evidence that those IEC people, personnel, they are SATU members, card-carrying members. That station will be closed. So I wanted to get his view of the IEC. What are they going to be doing on that? And then also is that how are they, doing, the recruitment of the presiding officers and all of that? Voter registration. Chairperson, we need more IEC offices. I thought maybe on their budget, they will actually put more money in terms of their areas, especially in the Eastern Cape, in the Northern Cape, in these areas which are very huge. There are many people who are crying that there are no IEC offices. So I did some sort of talk informally with the leadership of IEC that people need offices where they can register. Maybe that's the reason why maybe some of the people they're struggling to do that. We need more IEC offices, or let's say start having mobile units that will be going in different areas, different towns. Because you'll find that in Mount Elif, man, and those Bizana areas is too far. So there's one municipality where there's an IEC and all of that. So they need to look about where are their offices. And then what are they going to do about that? Are they having some money set aside, to actually, to do that? Also, there are people that, you are able to change addresses when you're going for by-elections. How is the IEC making sure that Mgcini Chwako stays in that ward, or he has not changed? Is there a way that you can say that because Mgcini is staying there, because for the sake that you go to a ward, if there's a by-election where maybe the governing party or let's say EFF is not popular, and then because I want to vote there, I'm able to go into the IEC website, change an address, make sure that I vote to that ward. So that now on the voting day, I'm able to vote in that ward, whereas I'm not. So how are they dealing with the issue of verification of addresses to ensure that people who are staying in the ward are the ones who are voting there? Because we are seeing that, but there has been complaints that there are people who are not staying in the ward that are voting there. So they actually have a look at that, and maybe I would like to get into their idea in terms of how are they going to be ensuring that people of that ward that are staying there are the ones who are going to be voting there. Second last point, leadership, almost done, is there are areas, there's been I wanted to get more details on the irregular and wasteful expenditure. I think the CFO just brushed through there quick, and I wanted to get some clarity what actually happened. What is the reason for late payments? Because when you say late payments, you must say what are the reasons? Why are you paying your suppliers late? Number two, why the payment to wrong, the suppliers? What would you make you do that? Because obviously, you're supposed to have a system where you verify the supplier paying details and all of that. So I wanted to get what happened on this regular expenditure, who did what, where, in terms of that. I think the last one, when I check this in, the very, very last one is the issue for the edible ink. Ne? I see, how are you dealing with this thing of the ink which is being removed? It is like that. Even in the previous voting that happened, the ink is always coming out. So I wanted to get a view on the IEC. When are they going to put this matter to rest? Because we're going to the LGE, and many political parties are tightening the whole screws, and it can actually cause the elections to be not free and fair. So how are they dealing with that, of that ink? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mtini, for your contribution. Veteran Lekota.
Chairperson, hello.
Yes, Veteran Lekota, you can proceed.
Yeah. Chairperson, my biggest concern is this movable ink. I thought that we had ink that was impenetrable, that could be relied on for people to vote and not to be removed. I don't know whether the IEC can explain to us, how did it come about that now we have ink that is movable and people have voted? Because I cannot see that we can have reliable voting and rely on the fact that people cannot vote many times if we don't have an ink that sticks for the number of days that an election is set for. I think my understanding has always been that all of the countries of the world have got this kind of ink that protect their electoral system. Can the IEC perhaps explain to us, is this, did we change from the previous ink, or have we never accessed that kind of ink so that we can put the reliability of our voting beyond doubt? That's the only question really I want to raise, because I do not see that we can have reliable elections if we cannot have something that guarantees us that people who have voted are those that are registered and they have registered and they can only vote once. Because it raises now also the second question. There are people in this country today who are many who come from other countries who are not our citizens. If those people can also go and vote, and because of this lack of reliable ink, they can do that. Doesn't that render our electoral system vulnerable? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Veteran Lekota, for your contributions. Honorable Play.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Firstly, I want to welcome the presentation and the report. Well, I think one of the first concerns I have is how we're going to target the low voter turnout. I think that for me is key. If we look at the over the years, we've seen that there's been a decline in terms of voter turnout. I think it's important in a democracy that we have more people voting. So it's important for us to encourage that. But Chair, I want to actually commend the IEC this morning. And I think it's important for us as a portfolio committee to give credit where it's due. This is the first time that the IEC had to conduct elections under COVID conditions. And this is during the by-elections that took place last year. There's some that took place as recent, and there's also some that's taking place tomorrow. And I must tell you that the reports we've received is that they have been able to run the elections smoothly, freely and fairly, but also with no reported cases or incidents. And I think it's important because this is a yardstick for us as government to say that we are ready and prepared for the local government elections come October. So I must place on record our thanks to the IEC in saying that they have really done well in the by-elections that passed. So I thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member I've not recognized? Thanks, members, for your contributions. And we'll request the IEC to interface. But I think I must make just a refresh that recently we're dealing with the electoral law amendment in which were passed in Parliament, both by the NSOP and NA, and part of those provisions give effects to certain areas which members are commenting. And I think in terms of preparing for the local government election. So I think we must even align ourselves within those laws we have passed in Parliament that give effect and responses to the areas that members have already identified. Two areas I think which I think we must also raise, Mr. Mamabolo. And I think the Deputy Minister may need to also highlight that members have raised it. Honorable Ross has raised the matter, and Honorable Mulekwa. I wanted to check on the complement on the mobilization of the youth of collecting the ID, Deputy Minister, vis-a-vis the work that the IEC is continue doing in terms of mobilizing society, in particular the youth, for registration and voting, just on those two areas. And the last one is on the, when the IEC were struggling with the finances to acquire the new device system for elections, there was some interaction with the National Treasury, and to some extent there was a side of the government printing works in terms of the money that was given to IEC. I wanted to check the terms of a reference in terms of the repayment and how it affects their financial status. I'm going to request the CEO, the CFO, the chairperson, and members, the commissioners, and thereafter the Deputy Minister to give comments and responses on the issues that have been raised by members. In that sequence, Prasai.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, Honorable Chabane, and members for the questions. The realignment of wards to voting districts has been done and completed. We did indicate that the Municipal Demarcation Board handed over the wards to the IEC. The final installment was in December last year, after which we then commenced a process to align our voting districts to the final wards. In fact, there were 1,200 odd voting districts that were split. Now, in resolving those splits, there's been a political consultation process through the Municipal Party Liaison Committee. Together with the Municipal Party Liaison Committee, we've decided to either create new VDs or to match split portions to existing VDs and so on. So that process is done. Now, the only leg that is outstanding is for those communities in the split portions to be registered. We will be having a targeted registration in the month of June in those communities to ensure that those people are correctly registered in the new wards in which they now are. But as you can understand, this is a very limited and targeted exercise and we will be doing a knock and drop together with the actual registration in a house-to-house type of mobilization. It is indeed correct that the Commission is considering additional modalities of voter registration. And we can confirm that there will be an electronic registration modality introduced, supported by safeguards, to ensure that the person who actually registered is the person who claims to be. So there are safeguards that will be inbuilt into that program. And announcements in that regard will be made by the Commission. The issue of voter turnout. It's a very interesting concept in South Africa because we are experiencing a decline in national and provincial election, but that phenomenon is not applicable in local government election because of this fact. In 2011, we were able to improve voter turnout from 48% to 58%, and we retained that turnout in 2016. But as I sit here now, I don't know what the impact of COVID is going to be on turnout. If all things were equal, in other words, if there was no COVID, as a commission, we would have pushed very hard through our programs, voter education, communication programs, and so on, to push that into the 60% arena, because we think that would be very important for the country to move turnout. With every ensuing election, the turnout has to increase. But we don't know how people are going to react to the COVID reality and how it's going to discourage, as it were, people from turning out. That does not mean we won't have programs to explain the safety measures that we are introducing at the voting station. We'll have campaigns to, as it were, assuage people and assure them that it will be safe to come out, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, the issue about how did we ascertain whatever, we are reporting that we overachieved the radio and television audience target because we had to pump a lot of resources to try to enthuse young persons to register. And the type of programs and the times on which we were advertising is times when it's in programs which have a high young listenership. So it's possible to segment your programs such that you know that at this times, the listenership or the viewership is largely of young persons. So the advertisement spend was targeted at those types of programs. So that's how the determination was made. The hype of the elections. The Commission will launch the election. The launch has not happened yet. The Commission will, on a date that they'll announce, launch the election and thus launch the media campaign that goes with the election. They launch the logo, they launch their strategy, to enthuse the cross-section of people for participation in the election. So that is in the offing, and it will happen. The issue of SADU and the employment of SADU. I think it is important that we say categorically that the Commission has no policy to employ SADU members. No such policy exists. And in fact, we have a recruitment and selection criteria which is discussed within a party liaison committee ahead of an election. Fortunately, we have a national party liaison committee tomorrow at which this matter will serve, as has been the case throughout our elections. That's one. Two, before presiding and deputy presiding officers are finalized, municipal party liaison committees are given the lists of all persons proposed for those roles. And there at the local level, if anyone has an objection based on the agreed criteria, they can raise an objection before the appointment is confirmed. And if in terms of that objection, we find that there's merit or it's a substantiated objection, that those persons can be removed. And we've removed people before on the basis that they flouted the agreed criteria. So there's a role for political parties in that process, but it has to happen in the local party liaison committee. You can imagine at the national level, we're dealing with 23,000 presiding officers. So it's best that that matter is dealt with in the municipal party liaison committee, and objections are raised there, they are escalated, and people, if the matter is substantiated, are removed. What the voters' role and addresses, it's an important issue, and it's important that we share the same vision around how we're going to protect the integrity of the election on the basis of an accurate voters' roll. We will obviously do our own validations. We have to. We'll do that. But political parties as well, they have a role to play. In the election timetable, there'll be a period where political parties are given copies of the voters' roll, and the expectation is that they inspect the roll ahead of certification. And if there are objections, then those objections are raised, and then the commission considers those objections before the roll is certified. It would help no one not to take advantage of that opportunity, only for issues to be raised on election day or on special voting day. There will be a specified period in the election timetable where everybody, parties, civil society, ordinary members of society can say, I'm raising an objection against the following people on the following basis. And then you substantiate the basis upon which the objection is based. Chair, just the last thing on my part really is the government printing works. That transaction had to be jettisoned because there was no lawful procedure. We could not find, Treasury could not find any lawful procedure to give effect to that transaction. As a result, all the funding for the voter management devices has been financed via a direct transfer to the IC by National Treasury. Indeed, Chair, to answer the question, will we have the voter management devices by the time of the election? Certainly, we will. In fact, we will have them before the registration weekend of the 17th and 18th of July. Chair, person of the IC, I thought I could deal with those, and I'm not sure how you want to deal with the balance, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Prasai. Mr. Mamabolo. We're struggling today, Mr. Mamabolo. We are confined to Prasai. I think don't take offense, Prasai. The CFO, if any comment?
Thank you, Chair. I'll take the two items asked by the gentleman. He did ask about the interest that we've incurred. Where does it emanate from? Well, the interest is actually sitting under fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And it's really actually also linked to the balance of the irregular that we have. So we do have a situation where we have occupying municipal offices. And I think because of a lot of administration issue, we find that sometimes the contracts are not forthcoming, the invoices are not forthcoming. And when the invoices do come, they are actually then including with interest. And that's where mostly the interest comes from. The gentleman also then asked about the payment to the wrong supplier. That issue comes from 2016. And the reason why it happened is because the names were similar. It was for an amount of 28,000. Subsequent to that, there hasn't been a reoccurrence because we have enhanced and improved our processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, CFO. I'm sure you're aware, CFO, that it may be an oversight that you are referring to you as a CFO. We're pardoning the reference to a gentleman because we must allocate the question to an honorable member so that we're clear who raised the matter. But I'm sure it was an oversight on your part, CFO. I'm going to go to the chairperson. You will also indicate if commissioners want to interface with the comments. Chairperson Mashinini.
Thank you, Chair. I think firstly, I would just like to thank the spirit in which we have received the commendations from the members. We would like to thank the honorable members that have acknowledged that there has been a progress improvement in the performance of the institution. While we are being engaged on the challenges, the weaknesses, and the concerns, but the overarching response by the honorable members has not gone unnoticed and unappreciated by the Commission. This is very important for us because we have to mobilize and motivate a large number of our employees who dedicate their time, their lives to serve our country and ensure that this institution discharges of its constitutional obligation and responsibility. And this being an institution that, among others in the country, is a critical cog for the stability of our nation. And it's an institution that, since the advent of our democracy, though we are being the youngest democratic country in the continent, we have become a preeminent electoral management body by any world standards. And I'd like to join in that chorus, especially in telling South Africans, as well as all our employees at large, including those who are in the voting districts, that this parliament or this portfolio committee appreciates the work and the sacrifices that they continue to do for our country. Honorable Chair, the number of issues really that have come up, I sum them up that there are those that specifically are looking at the financial year 2019 and 2020. And then there's another grouping which is saying going forward and in preparation of the upcoming local government election. I would like to say, with respect to those issues, we will continue to engage with the honorable members and to engage with the representatives of all political parties that are present in our PLC to address the matters and the issues that have been raised here. Because for us as a commission, we need to be understood that we do operate in a somewhat what to call a differentiated way to the administration that is led by the CEO. Our laws provide that the CEO conducts the elections. At the same time, it charges us as commissioners to ensure that we have appropriate oversight with respect to that. So these questions that have come up here, we are noting them also as the commissioners, and we will be taking them up with the administration that is led by the CEO. So we appreciate those questions and those issues in that particular context. And as already the CEO has responded, we are very much conscious of the issue of the voter challenges. And among the things that we want just to highlight there is that we must remember that as a country, we don't have what we call a compulsory voting and participation, where if you don't participate, like in other countries, you can get fined. So that has an impact in the voter turnout and participation. The other things we don't have control over is the issue of that there are those voters now who have been discouraged by various reasons from participating in the elections. Now, those groupings, we remain very much vigilant to say, how then do we continue to pursue them? We note the suggestions and the proposals of looking into increase what you call mobile units, and we note the proposals for us to strengthen our local offices and presence in the different regions that have been made by the members. On the issue that Honorable Rose in particular raised about the incomplete, what you call organization review, we as the organization have taken the review to the level that is and was feasible within the resources that were allocated. There has been adjustments because of the fiscal challenges that face us as an institution and others. So it's an area that, yes, will remain what you call vigilant about it, but we have taken it at this point to what was optimal. And in some cases where there's been a reconsideration because of resources, we would then consider to make the adjustments. There was also the issue raised regarding the materials, the paraphernalia in promoting elections. Yes, it is true. In the 94 and as well as in the 98 elections, we had what you call deep pockets when we were mobilizing and promoting, and we had T-shirts, paraphernalia, and all of those things. Those resources are no longer as prevalent as it used to be. So we continue to be much more creative, but we're also looking at innovations in other areas, including the question and the issue of our social media, where there is a stronger drive now in terms of the planned election that a large proportion of our resources are now going into the social media, because that is, again, where we identified that young people are much more likely to be actually on the social media than watching what you call the news in the evening. And then the other issue, honorable members, it's just, to indicate that we as a commission, and the CEO has pointed out, we don't have an employment policy that identifies others and discriminates against others. Because South Africa is a country where we have labor laws. So a recruitment and placement of people is based on what is lawful. And as such, we don't have a basis of discriminating against anybody because they have exercised their labor right. We must remember that under our labor laws, the right to association is every employee's right. And all the employees we have, one way or another, they may belong into a particular association. Hence the point that the CEO is making. We need to deal with the individual and with specific concrete allegations against them. Anything else outside of that will put us as a commission in a precarious situation in terms of adhering to the labor laws and the constitution of the country. Secondly, if there are any threats by the actions of the commission, they will also be dealt with according to the regulations and the that are applicable in terms of the code of conduct under elections. So, honorable members, it is important that we take all those things that equally political parties have got a code of conduct to operate under. But mechanisms to deal with any concerns are very much in place, all the way up to the local level. And once more again, we remain very much grateful for all the encouraging remarks and inputs and comments that draw us to continue to sharpen ourselves as we discharge of this national responsibility. On those words, I'd like to thank you. Unless there's one or two comments that any of my colleagues might want to make from where they may be chairperson, I'll request that if there is anything, any members of the commission that may want to make.
Thank you, Mashinini. Commissioners, if you want to make one or two comments before we invite the DM.
Chairperson, nothing from my side. Thank you. Thanks to all the members.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think as the CEO has alluded on the issue of the funding, the IEC remains a Chapter 9 institution. As Home Affairs, we do not exercise any management oversight over the IEC. In fact, it must remain with its independence. Most of the funding that they had received for those special projects, they ultimately came from the National Treasury and the Revenue Fund. Because of how the vote structure of government is structured, we only host their vote structures. And we really appreciate their ability to really invest in technology because technology is the future. So everything that we do, we must gravitate towards technology. And we must also really appreciate their ability to continue to manage the by-elections under very uncharted territory, which has been COVID-19. And they have done so with an excellent job. And we know very well that there are major, mountains that they still have to climb when it comes to the upcoming elections. And I think on the issue of voter turnout, we also, from our side, should also take responsibility. I think also as members of the portfolio committee, we must really implore on the political parties that are involved to also help in terms of the mobilization of people to go out and vote. And we do not just leave it only as the task of the IEC. We all have a responsibility to protect our democracy. And we will always work with the IEC and make sure that we remain committed towards giving out identity so that no South African must not be in a position where they are unable to vote on the basis that they do not have identity. Our strategy has in the main been to target the 16-year-olds, which means so that by the time they go and have qualified for voting, they already have an ID, and that we through our school project. We are, however, concerned that the majority of the people who we are sitting with their identity documents are second-time issues. We had in the previous financial years ran very good campaigns, and we reduced the number of IDs that were sitting with us. Currently, we're sitting with just above 400,000 IDs. We are already rolling out the campaign to make sure that all those who are second-time issues actually come and collect their identity documents so that everybody could have their identity document on the day of voting. And that is what we commit to continue to do and to work together with the IEC on that particular front. Other than that, Chairperson, I think that we very much welcome the presentation by the IEC on their APPs. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. The committee appreciates the work of the IEC. The comments and the contributions that members have made demonstrate their commitment to assist and complement the work that has been done by the Home Affairs. There are other issues, obviously, that will require party liaison committee, as the CEO has indicated, and that will find expression in terms of attending to certain issues that political parties need to resolve. We recommend, Chair, we thank also to observe the financial status of the IEC, and I think which demonstrate continuous governance, good governance at the level of the IEC. We must appreciate that Chairperson Mashinini and all commissioners for your strong good governance in the IEC in the areas that we've intervened as a result of wrongdoing and committed wrongdoing at the institution. The third one, members and the IEC, is that the IEC post-1994 has demonstrated always recorded progress in terms of its governance and also managing our elections. And I think that is it's a sign of a growing institution at the level of governance and also managing our elections. We have demonstrated quite well during the by-elections in the recent pandemic, both in adhering to the regulations that were pronounced in terms of the precautionary measures. And I think we must give appreciation and applaud. And this gives us hope that as we move towards the 27th of October and the preparation thereof, the sign of commitment will always be demonstrated in terms of the preparations and other logistics that will put in place so that we're able to achieve what is entailed in your APP. DM, I think you are quite correct, and members are quite correct, that part of our collective political work as we move out to the elections, we must complement the IEC in terms of mobilizing our people to go and register, and also mobilize our people to go and vote for their political choice for the local government elections. And that is a demonstration and commitment as a committee to continue doing this work and assisting the IEC and us as political parties, mobilizing particularly the youth and women to participate in registration date and the voting. I want to, on behalf of members of the committee, take note of your responses, the IEC, and appreciating the comments of members made and committing to certain areas that have made to be resolved. And we hope in our next interaction, we'll still record these questions we've made and expect your responses in terms of progress implementation in future. I want to take this opportunity to thank honorable members for attending this portfolio committee meeting, the IEC, the Deputy Minister, the Director General of Home Affairs, and other colleagues. And thanks very much. The portfolio committee meeting stand adjourned.
One note, Chairperson. Sorry, we still need to adopt the budget report. Beg your pardon.
Yes. Pardon me. We are going to request the IEC chairperson and the team and the CEO to be released, and also the officials who are not part of the item that is going to be dealt with, the fifth item at consideration and adopting of the report. I'm rushing because of the mini plenaries, Mr. Adam. Sorry for that. I'm going to invite. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'll try to be brief. We actually only need to deal with the recommendations section at the end of that report. We got contributions from two members, Honourable Roos and Honourable van der Merwe. And so I'll zoom straight into the section that we're dealing with, which is the observation section on page 33. And then if we scroll down, we'll see on page 35 under the Electoral Commission, these were contributions made particularly to the observations. And only the first one there was that the committee commended the work of the IEC was doing in working towards a clean audit, in particular the focus on addressing contingent liabilities. So there was just a note there of needing to particularly focus on contingent liabilities from Honourable Roos. Then on the government printing works, there
Sorry, Adams.
Yes, sir.
I'm noting that the IC, there's an attendance of an IC member. Can we request yes. Okay, continue.
Thank you, sir. Again, given no time limitations, I'm going to presume that members have read through these observations and recommendations rather than going through all of them, and just focus on the ones that are being changed. Is that okay, Chairperson?
Proceed, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, sir. Then the question of the government printing works. There was a note about certain audit data that was lost. I was not in that meeting last week, Friday. I was at the doctor's. So I just want to confirm that this is correctly captured, 4.2.6, that the committee was concerned that there was no indication of the financial statements for 2018-19 and 2019-20, and that there was certain audit data that was lost. So if I can just get input on that one, there isn't clarity there.
Okay, can we start? Can I invite members on the comments on the IC? Let's go back. Members, can you comment on the IC? Honorable Tito. Honorable
So
Roos.
there's a hand raised by Honourable Roos.
Honorable Roos, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I've just noticed that things seem to have changed around a bit, but the comment on contingent liabilities. So here there's the DH. There's 4.15. The DHA should have a contingency plan towards the readiness. That was under the IEC. So the point that I added as 4.15 was that the committee was concerned that contingent liability still exceeds 2 billion and have increased from the previous financial year. So that 4.15 should actually be under IEC. It's an IEC issue. And that clean audit was then the it was already appointed. It was 4.17 under the IEC. So the contingent liabilities was under the DHA, and it was
correct. Yeah.
Note that they still exceed 2 billion and have increased from the previous financial year.
Any comment, Honorable Mulikwa?
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't have any comment. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable Lekwase? Honorable Mgwene? Can you take your hand down, Honorable Ross? Thank you.
Madam Chair.
No comment. Okay. Honorable Kanyile?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm covered.
Thank you, Honorable Kanyile. Veteran Dakota? Okay. Honorable Pillay?
Chair, I'm just thinking that 4.16, I don't see whether that last line is going to make any substantial difference to the statement made already. So if it stops at clean audit, I think that's sufficient. It doesn't have to say "and" in particular. And then above that on 4.15, I'm just wondering whether we want to say that would take place on the 27th or we stop at local government elections.
Mr. Adams, the noted Honorable Pillay.
Thank you.
Noted. 4.16. Why are you saying IEC must focus on contingent liabilities?
So this was an issue raised by Honorable Roos in his contribution, sir. I think it just makes the statement more specific.
No. The contingent liabilities were at the DHA.
Okay, I got confused. I think I thought Honorable Roos was saying that it was a IEC issue, not a DHA issue.
Remember, there was an oversight which was carried. I think members who attended there, if I can recall it well, was Honorable Ross and Chairperson Bongo. I can't recall another member. We're dealing with these contingent liabilities. So what he's saying is that it resides with the Home Affairs.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Sorry, Chairperson.
Yeah?
Chairperson, sorry to interrupt. I've copied the text into the chat as it should be. Because the contingent liabilities was purely from a Home Affairs point of view. It had nothing to do with IEC.
Yes. Was what I'm correcting that
I've copied the text into the chat as it should be.
Yeah, but part of the Ms. Adams, part of the reference you must do, you must go back to the notes and presentation as made by DHA on the area of contingent liabilities. You will then get more clarity and how you must put it in the report. But also, Honorable Ross assists in terms of what should be what's supposed to be the caption.
Okay, so I've got the notes from Honorable Roos, and I'll insert them accordingly.
Yes, but what I'm advising you also for proper, you must go back to the notes as presented by Home Affairs.
Yes.
On the matter of contingent liabilities, so that you do cross-reference, including the submission of Honorable Ross. So
okay,
it does not.
I'll double check.
Yes.
I'll double check that, sir.
Thank you. Can you go to? Can you go to
move on to the next section?
Government Printing Works, colleagues.
Chairperson, if I'm correct, the issue was actually to do with the certain audit data that was lost, and not that there was a lack of financial statements in 2018, 19, and 1920.
There was a loss of data. They call it that universal assist, which contributed to a delay of financial statement or audit process at government printing works. And in that thing, the committee recommended that the minister must take, in fact, the minister in that meeting committed that they're going to take steps to make sure to get in the bottom of this crisis that happened at government printing works.
Okay, noted, sir.
On the vacant post there by government printing works, if you recollect well, the minister indicated that the process is underway for the three positions, if I'm correct, CEO, CFO, and I think GM operation. They're done with the interviews or something in relation to that. There's another matter which I think the committee is going to do an oversight. I'm not sure how you will capture it on the allegations that are rising from government printing works and the posture of the committee in relation to our oversight in that institution.
So this is actually a separate matter where you're dealing here with the budget vote report and the annual performance plan. The issue of the acting CEO, that's actually a separate issue. It doesn't really relate to the budget and annual performance plan of the committee. We can include it in the report, but it's actually a separate issue. So I'll take your advice on that matter.
Noted. Members,
Okay.
Can we interface with the government printing works? Honorable Mgcine?
There was another issue on the release of the 2019-2020 AG report. I think committee noted that that report is not being released. Now the delay in terms of there's a delay in terms of starting with the 2021, I think, audit because of the loss of data. That is what I remember on the chair. I think they said that they do have the financials and the audit report for 1920, but they cannot start the 2021 audit because of the loss of data. But I stand to be corrected.
Okay. Mr. Matonsi, there was an issue about annual reports that was not submitted. What is the status about it?
The report of 2019, 2020, 2020, they have not yet finalized the financial statement. They are still dealing with the AG. There is a letter that the audit committee sent to the acting CFO, which I've forwarded this morning to members.
Okay. Can we pass to Mr. Adams?
Thank you, sir. I've noted what Eddie's indicated as part of the observations, and we'll now move to the recommendation section.
Sorry, Chair.
After you. Sorry, sir.
Yes, Honorable Ruff.
So just on this section, I've once again copied the text into the chat for this one because 4.27, the original clause was that the committee was concerned there was no indication of the financial statements for 2018-19 and 2019-20. So the issue there was that GPW was not submitting financial statements on time. The next clause was 4.28. That was about the 250 million, so that's fine. And then there was a proposed clause 4.29, which is the committee was concerned about the loss of financial data for 2019-20, which has stalled the audit process. So actually there was an original 4.27, 4.28 stay as is, and then the proposal was to add 4.29, where we just note that there was this loss of financial data there. It was an observation that came out of the meeting.
Yes.
And then subsequently to that, then the minister said he's going to do something about it. There will be something happening afterwards.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I've captured it accordingly.
The 250 million, it came from their financial statement that there are other government departments that own printing works.
Yes.
It came from the financial statement.
Part of yeah, I believe it was in the presentation. Sorry, Eddie captured this point. I wasn't in the meeting.
Chairperson.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at 4.27, and the one that Mr. Ross has just indicated, the 4.29. They look almost the same, except that the 4.29, there on 2019-2020, it should be 2020-2021, which means the data, I don't know when it was lost, but they are struggling now. They don't have data for the 2020-2019, 2020-2021, sorry.
Okay, it's fine. Just finalize work on that amendment with Mr. Adams. But
yes,
the narrative, yes, I think the narrative is. Can we move to recommendations?
Thank you, sir. Here we had an input on 5.1.2 on the BMA Act. This was a combination of both Honourable Roos's and Honourable van der Merwe's contributions. The statement is engaged with the Minister of Finance to ensure that the BMA was adequately funded. The Minister of Home Affairs should further engage with ministers whose departments are operational at their border environment to ensure that they are familiar with the regulations of the BMA Act. The DHA must brief the committee on the BMA project implementation plan, including holding slow or non-compliant partner departments accountable at a cabinet level. So the additions in red there from Honourable Roos and van der Merwe.
Noted. Can you proceed?
Thank you, sir. Then 5.1.4. Ensure that long queues at Home Affairs offices, especially in cities, are resolved. The Minister of Home Affairs must ensure that this is resolved by providing an appointment system, as well as intensified rollout of bank projects to all branches, while ensuring that mobile offices are fully operational and mobilized. I believe this was the restatement of the original statement to make it more specific.
Okay.
Thank you. And then 5.1.6, ensure that staff respond to queries by public representatives and members of the public forwarded to the head office. If the DHA was sticking to its timeframes for their service, there would be no need for public representatives and members of the public to be frustrated by the non-response. The committee recommended adding an application progress tracking system visible to applicants in the medium term. This is from Honourable Roos. So the addition in red there. I'll proceed until somebody stops me. So 5.1.7. Meeting with the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, as well as the State Information Technology Agency and the South African Revenue Service, to devise a plan to ensure that the system downtime at DHA is resolved. The addition is the task team addressing CETA issues must provide quarterly reports to the committee on the progress of their work. The suggestion was actually to have monthly reports, but I've made it quarterly to ensure that they're not bogged down by the reporting process and rather focus on the work of addressing the issues with CETA. There was also a question of why SARS was included here, and it's because they run the advanced the advanced movement tracking, movement control system at the borders. And that they have no downtime, whereas the CETA systems in Home Affairs offices seem to have a lot of downtime. Then moving on to 5.1.8, we just reworded again.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Honourable Ross.
Chairperson, in 5.17, I don't know why SARS is there, because do they have any role to play in that CETA system?
May I answer, sir?
Yes, Mr. Adams.
So the SARS deals with the advanced movement control system at the borders, and they have zero downtime. Whereas the CETA is dealing with officers and has a consistent downtime. So the idea raised in the meeting, if I've captured it correctly, is that there should be a communication between communications, Home Affairs, and SARS to ensure that the systems all run reliably. So that because they're not addressing the downtime by CETA, there should be a more collaborative effort to ensure that the downtime emulates what happens at the border environment.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can you move?
5.1.8. The Minister to provide the committee with a detailed plan to rapidly increase the 220 immigration inspections to be conducted per year by working closely with other state entities. The inspectorate must find more effective ways to detect and process undocumented migrants. The Minister of Home Affairs and Labour and Employment should finalise as a matter of urgency the discussion around amending legislation to impose sectoral targets for the employment of foreign nationals in sectors of the economy where South Africans are overlooked for opportunities. This was raised by Honourable van der Merwe. Honourable Roos also asked a question of why the Department of Labour was included in this, and it's because they're both part of the sectoral target policy, sectoral employment target policy. And so it's a discussion between the two.
The ministers have been appointed to deal with this question, both the Labour and Home Affairs.
Correct.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
Honourable Ross.
Yeah, Chair, the comment was actually about quotas. Why we were talking about quotas, because that's purely a Labour issue. So that was actually the proposed change.
Okay, we've removed quotas from the statement.
Remember, colleagues, that the mandate has not been finalized by both the ministers in terms of the mandate to look on what Honourable Ross has indicated on the issue of the quotas, or in relation to that point. But you have captured it well. I mean, you have captured Honourable Ross.
Okay, can I proceed?
Yes.
Then finally, we have two statements on the government printing works, two additions. The GPW must give the committee regular updates on the coordination and implementation of governance activities, including compliance and risk, management of previous audit findings, and implementation of recommendations by the internal audit to ensure that the reasons for repeated non-adherence to annual report deadlines are addressed. So again, related to the statement raised, or the observation raised above. And then secondly, must present to the committee a report on the investigations into lost audit data and security breaches. Again, related to the same point.
Okay, there are two issues which I don't know where we're going to allocate them. One is on a footprint of government printing works inside the countries. It arises from their APP. And secondly is that we must reaffirm the government printing works as an entity that continuously derive profit to the fiscals. yeah, I'm not sure where you're going to put it, either on the because yes, it can be on the recommendation, but maybe on your body of government printing works, on your analysis on government printing works.
So the Chairperson, the 5.3.2 captures the first point you raised on the new markets and building relationships with African countries in a broader sense, purely more than just with SADC. And then I'll insert a statement on commending profitability and ensuring that it has a continued profitability.
No, Adams, you must put it on the analysis, because here we're dealing with recommendation.
Okay.
It must be removed from recommendation, go to the analysis, because it's what the committee has in the previous meetings. Once the report came to the committee, was been recommended, and the APP outlines that there's a progress around that line of footprint inside the countries. Other members, can we, if we're fine with the final comments, we'll give time for Mr. Matonzi and Mr. Adams to just finalize on the additions we've made, corrections we've made, and they will we adopt the report. Can I invite adoption of the report with the amendments made?
Chairperson, I'll move for the adoption.
Honorable Pile, move for adoption. Seconder. Can I recognize the seconder to the report?
Seconded, Chairperson.
Seconder, Honorable Lekwa. An objection to the report? Or abstainers?
Yeah, not the abstaining of the EFF.
EFF or abstain? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
The report is adopted with amendments made. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, members. We wish you good luck in your debates tomorrow on the vote of Home Affairs. Thanks very much.
Chairperson, before you close, yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes, yeah, it's just an announcement. Last week, you'll recall that we made a decision as a committee that we're going to conduct an oversight to government printing works. The application has been made and submitted today, and then the oversight will be on Tuesday, meaning that we'll be traveling to Pretoria on Tuesday, and then we'll take a full day on Wednesday to conduct an oversight, and then come back on Thursday. So on Tuesday, we still have a meeting on Tuesday from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock on ABs. And then after that meeting, and then members will just travel to Pretoria, or those who are taking flight, and then they will fly in the afternoon. And then we have that oversight on a Wednesday, and then we come back on Thursday. And also taking into account that on Thursday, political parties are having caucus from, I think it's from 10 o'clock. Yeah, so that's all for now, Chairperson. And also that no, the Select Committee on Justice and Security, they said no, they will not be able to take part in the oversight because of the EPCs, the budget vote debates. Thanks.
Thanks, members. That is the announcement on your decision we've taken. Yes, comments?
Sorry, Chair, I was struggling to unmute. Just please note the DA's reservation on the report.
There are two, this abstinence and objection. Is there any what reservation in the rules?
Yeah, I think there is, and people have reservations. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm saying, I'm asking, is there any rule that
no,
allocates?
No, I haven't seen it.
Noted, Honorable Ross, noted. Members, this is the announcement that was made for oversight and will then interact with Mr. Matonsi on further logistics on the decision we took, that we must urgently interface with the government printing works. Any other matter?
That's all, Chair.
Okay. Thanks very much. Honorable Pillay, enjoy your birthday today. I wish you a happy birthday. The
Thank you
meeting
very much, Chair.
The meeting stand adjourned. Thanks very much.
Adam?
Yes, Eddie.
Don't leave.
Okay.
Yeah. Others can leave.
Let me remain with you and check.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
You want me to share the document again, Eddie?
Yeah, I think so. So that no, we can.
Yes.
Go to. I saw some mistakes at the top of the document.
Yeah.
Mr. Martin,
Yes, Chair. Yes, Chair.
can you allow all members and those that supposed to leave to?
Oh, to leave. Okay.
Yeah.
Should I can remove them too, Eddie.
Let me. Yeah, just try to remove them.
Okay, I've removed the quota.
Remove everyone so that we are the only three.
Yep. PMG, I don't know if they PMG don't need to be in the meeting, huh?
No. This is not a committee meeting now. The meeting.
Thank you, PMG. Goodbye.
And then also the streaming, Parliament streaming.